Growing up in PG County, man, for me, it's sports related. It was a constant challenge. A challenge in the sense that you just always had to be prepared every workout, every practice, every game to bring your A game. There's literally no days off growing up in PG County because there's so much talent in the area. My introduction to basketball in PG County was through county ball. So if I'm familiar now, they don't really do county like that the way that they used to. It's ironic, I got two sons now, so my oldest son, he plays county right now, football. But that was my introduction, playing for Bowie, playing against Silver Hill, playing against Kettering, playing against Oxon Hill, and it was always bump. So going from there to AAU, playing with Team Maryland and Maryland Select, and then playing with DC Assault. It was very high level basketball, and it was regular. It wasn't like, any special weekends. Regular basketball, Monday to Sunday in PG County was bump.
During basketball season, Harmon gets a bit out of control. And this year's team's going to be intense, exciting, and tough to beat. But Harmon is sold out, so the only chance you'll have to see Cal basketball is at the Oakland Coliseum.
Check out Cincinnati, the Otis Spunkmeyer Classic, Arizona State, and national champion UCLA.
I already got the best seat in the house for every game, but if I were you, I'd call 1-800-GO-BEARS.
My dad, he knows basketball the way, he just knows basketball like none other. So growing up under a coach, there's nothing that goes unnoticed. There's nothing he doesn't miss. So for me, like when we used to watch NBA games in the house, I don't really have any memories of watching basketball as a fan. I was always watching basketball in the house as a student of the game. So when we were younger, that was when like TiVo first came out. So you were able to pause live games or record the game at least and rewind it and stuff like that. So the way my dad watches games, live games, is like the way a coach watches film. So he's watching games, and he used to scout for the NBA. So he's watching games, he's pointing out plays, he's pointing out tendencies. He's watching the game, and he ain't really paying attention to the Euro step and to the James Harden 6 between the legs, double step back. He's watching, defenders help. He's watching the way defenses react to the offense, the way the offense counters and reacts to the defense trying to stop their play. So he was just always picking my brain while we watched games and taking opportunities to point out something to teach me. So that really led to my development and being a really cerebral player and having an IQ, because I was always forced to think the game. So I went to Montgomery County private schools through elementary school. My mom is an elementary school teacher. She's been in elementary education for 25 years now. She was real big on education. So just to put my sister and I in the best schools in the area, my dad used to drive us out to Montgomery County to private school. So then when it came time to go to middle school, St. Albans was one of the most prestigious schools, at least in this area, maybe in the country. But I went there for middle school, and St. Albans was just with that environment, I wasn't mature enough for it. I wasn't ready for it. Because it was all boys school, pretty strict environment. So I just wasn't mature enough for it. I had to find something else, somewhere else to go. And Kenny Johnson, he recruited me over to Paul VI with Glenn Farello. So it was Farello's first year at PVI. Coach Kenny Johnson was coaching with, I think Takeover. I think they were Takeover by then, but he was coaching with Takeover. I was playing with Assault, playing up at Run and Shoot. I don't even know what they call it now. I'll be forgetting, but I was playing at Run and Shoot, and Kenny Johnson, he took a liking to me and was like, man, we want you in our program over at Paul VI. So he was part of Farello's staff. So I went from St. Albans over to PVI, and I was part of that very first class that started, the powerhouse that Farello has built over there at PBI now. Practices were tough. I would say playing in the WCAC and practicing under those conditions really prepared me and prepared my fellow teammates for college. Because you got to be sharp. You can't get away with just being talented in the WCAC. You got to be talented, but you also got to have an IQ. You also got to have a work ethic. You also got to play both ends of the floor. You can't just get your bucket on offense and then be lazy on defense, because coming down on the other end is a top 50 player that you got to guard, or you got to play help defense on and recover. I mean, so it was really competitive. We had a big rivalry with O'Connell when I was there. Kendall Marshall was the head of that program during my years, and if you know basketball, how accomplished he ended up. But Tyler Thornton was that's one of my really good friends. He was a backcourt competitor. I think guys know. I mean, I tell guys the Mathers lineup during my years at PVI. They had Quinn, Jeremy, Jarian, Victor. I don't even think Vic started. Vic was like the sixth man. They had Kenny Tate as their starting five. And what people don't realize is they had Josh Shelby and Najee Hibbert on that same mob at DeMatha during those years when I was at PBI. So when you talk about, they had 5-6 pros, NBA pros on that team. So that'll give you an idea of what it was like playing in the WCAC. It was constant game. The challenging part was when growing up under a coach. When he's watching my game, it's the same way. He's critiquing every aspect, of my game. So it was nothing like there were times where I would leave a game with 25 points, but he wasn't too impressed because I missed a defensive assignment here, or I didn't make a play there that I should have made. That might be something that we've been working on. So it was, how do I put it? It was tough, achieving and obtaining a high level of satisfaction from, a father that's a D1 coach, because his standard and his bar and what he knows about the game, he ain't gonna be impressed by a stat line. He gotta see this. He gotta make sure, that whatever mistakes I was making week 3, I'm not making those same mistakes week 7, despite what my stat line may look like. So it was tough, but it was definitely good for my growth as a point guard. For me, I was always or at least when it came time for recruitment, I was a low to mid-major recruit. Finishing out high school and going into college. So for me, I wanted to, ultimately I decided, okay, I know what I'm gonna get with, from my dad in that program at Morgan. Morgan at the time, they had won 3 of the last 4 MEAC championships. So it was a winning program. I knew what to expect from my dad. I know oftentimes, in the recruiting process, the coach may build some type of rapport with you while he's recruiting you, and then when you get there and join the program, things may be a little different. You could also get to a program that if they're not winning, and then by your sophomore year, the coach is gone. You got a new, entirely new staff coming in. So for me, it was about, okay, I know what I'm getting with this coach. I know what to expect. I know what I'm going to get, and it's a winning program. Like I mentioned, I'm competitive. I want to win. So that's ultimately why I made the decision to go play at Morgan. And a lot of people ask me especially now with the HBCU discussions and debates coming up about, our players should go to HBCUs, or why they should or why they shouldn't. And I can speak to the fact that I was completely unaware of HBCUs coming out of high school. The only reason why I knew of HBCUs is because my father coached at one. And I think that's an area where we, as a community, we got to do better to spread, that type of awareness and to make families and athletes more aware of the benefits of going to a HBCU and playing at a HBCU and what that experience is like on and off the court, in and outside of the classroom.
Miko does a nice job going to the glass. Hampton has 10 offensive rebounds tonight, and they've been able to convert 5 of those. Good ball movement. NBA three for Bozeman. Great look.
My favorite on-the-court story is probably our televised game against Hampton. Hampton is, Hampton was and still is a really good program. So we competed with them every year, and we had maybe like 2 televised, ESPN games with Hampton as our matchup. And I want to say it was my sophomore year, but the game was tough. We might have had like 3 or 4 of our starters foul out of that game. Hampton had, a similar situation, guys in foul trouble. In the regulation, it was a tie game. It went into overtime. Then it went into double overtime, I'm sorry. But I had hit a big shot as the shot clock was winding down at the top of the key. I had sized my man up and hit a 3 to kind of seal the game for us in double overtime. And it was just a really big moment, for the program for that year. And with it being like a rivalry match against Hampton on TV, it was just a really special moment. They ended up, our fans stormed the court at the end of the game, and we went out and partied crazy after that game to celebrate. So that was a moment that I'll never forget for sure. I experimented with coaching when I finished playing at Morgan. So I coached at Duval. One of my former coaches pretty much recruited me on over to his program. He was the head coach at Duval at the time. And he was just like, man, Blake, like, I would love to have you with my program, being a young guy, close in age to the high school players and able to, to pour into them. So I coached at Duval for a year. I then went and coached at St. Mary's in Annapolis. One of the players that I was coaching at with the Blue Devils, was like the face of the program at St. Mary's, and he and his family took a liking to me and wanted me to go ahead and join the staff over there at this school. So I coached for maybe like 2 or 3 years when I finished playing ball. It's something that comes natural to me, but 2 things, ultimately led to me deciding that I wasn't going to go ahead and coach. One, I had my son the summer before my senior year in college. So I feel anybody that's, especially like when you're young and you trying to prove yourself and establish yourself in the coaching ranks, it's a grind. You gotta hustle. You gotta put a lot of time into coaching. You gotta sacrifice not only your time, but just a lot of different areas of your life. If you're gonna be successful at coaching, you gotta be there. And not only during practice time, but it's times where you might gotta pick players up. You might gotta drop them off after practice. You might gotta stay late with them. You might gotta get in the gym with them outside of practice hours to work on their craft and develop their game. You might gotta go, to an opponent's game and scout and analyze your opponent. There's a lot that goes into coaching. And for me, being a young father and being a single father, it was really tough to balance just those responsibilities, trying to be like the best coach I could be, but also, having my son. Coaching is you do the coaching for free. You might get a stipend. You might get $1,500, for the year of coaching, but you can't take care of yourself and a child, just off coaching alone. You gotta have a 9 to 5. So me leaving work and then going to practice and games and having my son, it was just really tough. There was certain times where I would have him at practice and he'd be running along the sidelines, or sometimes I would have him fake participating in the drills while I'm running practice. He doing his ball handling on the side, so it was just tough to balance. And the other thing for me was, I think a lot of people expected me to coach just because of who my dad is. And for me, it was I realized I wanted to kind of trailblaze my own path. I didn't want to have a career where I'd constantly be compared to my father. He's a better coach than his dad was, or he'll never be the coach that his dad is or was, or who's better at this or that. And I didn't want, I wanted to make my own imprint and not, constantly be, oh, okay, yeah, that's Lil Bose right there coaching. So those were the two things for me. For me, it was just hard to try to balance the commitment and the time that's required to coach, and two, just wanting to do my own thing and leave a legacy and an imprint on the world that's more of my own rather than my dad's. I pursue life and my career goals and what I want out of life in the same way that I pursued basketball. I was always really competitive. I used to cry every time I lost a game up until I was like 12. So I don't care whether it was camp, whether it was a AAU game or what. I hated to lose. So I'm still that way to this day, where I'm really competitive and I want to, if I'm gonna do something, I'm 10 toes down. I'm gonna put my all towards it, and I want to be really good at it and succeed and excel at it. And I feel like that, a large part of that is due to my background as an athlete, and furthermore as a player in PG County. Because again, like I said, it's really competitive. Like, you got to be a go-getter, man. As I touched on, like, my experience, I was forced to just go get a job and start a career. I had never really considered what I wanted to do after basketball, despite the fact that, I always cared about my academics. But for me, it was just like, all right, I care about my academics and I'm competitive in the sense where I ain't gonna be no dummy. I'm gonna have good grades, and folks in my classroom that aren't athletes, they're not gonna look at me like I'm some dumb jock, like I ain't got, anything to offer to the conversation. So beyond that, though, I never had any consideration of like what I wanted to do outside of basketball. I thought about stuff like, all right, you got scouts and coaches and trainers, but anything literally outside of basketball, I never really considered what I wanted to do. But then I was forced to just get a career, and as I mentioned, I didn't enjoy my career. Working for the government in finance and acquisition, there was nothing about that intrigued me or was exciting to me. It still is, and I think it always will be, like a tough adjustment to go from playing ball and being very active to sitting, 8 hours a day at a desk, confined, to a desk and to an office space. It's challenging, man. It's difficult. So, a combination of my own experiences and realizing a lot of my peers and a lot of my teammates from college and from high school, a lot of them, I noticed just being aware that they struggled as well trying to find a career once they're done playing basketball. So that just got my mind churning, and I was like, man, there has to be something in place to introduce athletes at a younger age to alternative careers after basketball and after sports. I say basketball because that's what I'm familiar with. But it was through my own experiences and through seeing my friends and my teammates encounter the same challenges. Like, man, what else am I good at out here? How can I make an honest, earnest living and still, afford to live the lifestyle I want to live if I can't do it through basketball? So for me, I was like, okay, that's why I started the Pivot Group, which is a nonprofit, and it's all about diversifying career opportunities for student athletes. How can we, not only expose them to different career paths, but prepare them so when their time comes, they're ready and they're not scrambling, after their senior year, or they're not, feeling like the only thing they're good at or the only way that they can provide for their family is by playing ball. So that's, my ultimate objective with it is to really make a difference and kind of, plant those seeds early on so, high school athletes know what they want to go study when it comes time to, go to college. They know what they want to major in, and they know what they want to major in because they know what they want to do with their lives when they're done playing ball. The inspiring message that I can give to youth is to You know, I mean, I know this has been used before, but I like the saying, dare to be different. Like, dare to be different, man. Like, you know, oftentimes in our communities, we are encouraged and praised for athletic achievement and accomplishment. The glamorized professions are, you know, sports and entertainment, but maybe you're a really good musician. Maybe your niche is numbers, and you could be a really successful engineer. Maybe you have a knack for real estate, whether it's commercial or residential, but dare to be different in the sense that you can explore other avenues and other options, other interests, other passions. You don't have to do, you know, what your father did, or you don't have to do what your friends are doing. You can, if that so happens to be, you know, your shared passion, but if it isn't, go for it, because you never want to limit your potential.